stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Stay connected with the world through WION.
Hello and welcome. You're watching live broadcast on WION with me, Neha Khanna. In the next half hour, we'll bring you all the top stories from around the globe. Let's begin with the headlines we're tracking at this hour. The US military's European command releases footage of the encounter between an American drone and a Russian fighter jet over the Black Sea. The declassified video depicts critical moments in the mid-air crash. Russian President Vladimir Putin calls on Russian business leaders to invest in new technologies and enterprises to help Russia overcome what he calls Western attempts to destroy its economy. The UK bans TikTok on government devices following similar action by Europe and the United States in recent weeks. Cabinet Minister Oliver Dowden makes the announcement in Parliament. Protest mayhem in Israel against the government's proposed judicial overhaul bill. President Herzog says a civil war is now within touching distance. Dozens of roads in Tel Aviv are blocked. Protesters pepper sprayed. Clashes erupt in Greece after over 40,000 people take to the streets against the deadly train incident. The police fire tear gas while protesters hurl firebombs at officials. Well, for the rest of the show, let's now hand you over to Susan Tehrani in New York.
The U.S. military's European command has released the footage of the encounter between a U.S. drone and a Russian fighter jet. The new visuals show the moments before the MQ-9 Reaper crashed into the Black Sea. A Russian Su-27 fighter jet is shown approaching the drone, where the jet is seen dumping fuel as it intercepts the U.S. surveillance drone. Till now, Russia has denied the collusion. During the interception, the propeller of the drone was damaged, forcing the drone operators to fly the aircraft as a glider. Earlier, defense ministers and military chiefs of the two countries held a rare telephone conversation. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that he had spoken with Russia's defense minister about the incident, however, declined to offer much detail of the call. Meanwhile, U.S. Top General Mark Milley said that the drone would be difficult to recover given the depth of the water in the area. The comments came after a top Russian official said that Moscow will work to retrieve the wreckage.
Probably about maybe 4,000 or 5,000 feet of water, something like that. So any recovery operation is very difficult at that depth by anyone. That's the first point. Secondly is, true, we don't have any ships there, but we do have a lot of allies and friends in the area.
For more on this, a retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, Senior Fellow at the military expert for defense priorities, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel with 21 years of service, including 4 combat deployments, is joining us live from Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us on WION. This incident seems concerning, to say the least. What is happening right now? Are we really on a brink of war with Russia?
Well, let's certainly hope not, and it doesn't have to be that way. But this does represent an inflection point potentially, and definitely a change, because as the Pentagon itself has released in just the last few days, encounters in the Black Sea between the U.S. and Russian aircraft, or Western and Russian aircraft, are actually common in the years before the war started. In fact, it was up to 400 per year, and it's continued on to the point where the Pentagon calls them routine. Up to this point, there has been no physical interaction between the aircraft. Now that it's very clear from this video that's been released by the Pentagon that this was an absolute decision and an act by Russia, intentional to have some sort of interaction, whether they were intending to actually knock it out of the sky or just blind its sensors with the dumping of fuel is unknown, but it definitely happened. And so the question is going to be, is this going to be the new normal? Is this something that Russia is going to continue to do to harass the pilot, the aircraft, especially the reconnaissance drones, or is this going to be a one-off kind of situation? And then the other question is, what is the U.S. going to do in response? Do they send more aircraft in? You had people like Lindsey Graham suggesting we should shoot down anything that came into near contact with American fighter aircraft or any kind of aircraft. Or do we maybe start flying them further back from the Russian air bases, as this one was actually pretty close? And all that remains to be seen. But it's a very tense situation, and it could escalate if things get, any more kinetic.
Colonel, why isn't there an appetite to de-escalate this situation, not just with the United States and Russia, but with the Ukrainians and Russia as well, notably on Capitol Hill? I mean, you mentioned Lindsey Graham. It almost seems like he's asking for some kind of confrontation.
Well, I mean, that's the net result of what he's asking, which is why it's really bad advice, which it doesn't appear that the White House is going to be taking that kind of advice. And let's hope they continue down that path. But your other question is really more pertinent in this situation because the biggest risk that has existed from the beginning has been that any kind of, whether miscalculation, mistake, an accident, something like this happened that's not intended, but then it sparks something bigger, which could cause a clash between NATO and Russia. And of course, because of the number of nuclear weapons on either side of that calculation, the consequences of that could be catastrophic. It is absolutely in the interest of the United States and certainly of NATO that we seek to de-escalate this situation and bring this war to a rapid conclusion as quickly as we can. And of course, the Ukraine side is opposed to that right now, and understandably so, because they were invaded. There's a foreign military on their borders, and that physically possesses their land. But at some point, we have to realize that militarily, there's just almost no chance that Ukraine can drive Russia out of its territories. And so then the question becomes, do you keep on trying to do something that won't succeed, causing even more of your people to be killed, more of your cities destroyed, or do you find some way to bring this to an end and at least stop the destruction of your country?
Thank you so much for that analysis, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis. After a $54 billion bailout, Credit Suisse's stock recovered over 20%. European markets, too, recovered somewhat after Credit Suisse announced that it will borrow money from the Swiss Central Bank. But investors will focus on the Swiss government's discussions, an emergency meeting on Thursday about the fallout of the 167-year bank. The European Central Bank, though, hiked rates by 50 basis points on Thursday despite the turmoil in the banking sector. Last week, Silvergate Bank shot, followed by a collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank and the Signature Bank 2 days later. The abrupt closure of those U.S. banks is touted as the trouble of the threes that sparked fears of a broader global banking crisis and led financial markets on a roller coaster ride. After the collapse of those U.S. banks, global financial stocks lost $465 billion in under 2 trading sessions. While a mini recovery was in play late on Tuesday, news emerged of troubles at Credit Suisse. The focus of investors and regulators then shifted to Europe from the United States, despite the Swiss National Bank stepping in to infuse $54 billion into troubled Credit Suisse. There was no respite in the financial markets meltdown. Indeed, while the Swiss Central Bank tried to shore up investor confidence, the market rout continued with Asian markets flashing red on Thursday. Credit Suisse has been struggling for survival for a while, and for now, there seems to be no relief for Switzerland's second largest lender. That's because its largest investor, the Saudi National Bank, has ruled out any further financial assistance to the 167-year-old Swiss bank. Shares of Credit Suisse plunged nearly a third on Wednesday, hitting a new record low. That came after the bank's largest investor, the Saudi National Bank, said that it could not provide more financial assistance due to regulatory issues. The Saudi lender had acquired a stake of almost 10% last year after participating in Credit Suisse's capital raising. The Saudi bank back then had also committed to investing up to $1.5 billion. However, Saudi National Bank chairman Ammar al-Khudairi said the bank cannot provide additional funding. Some investors are worried about the global banking system's resilience. For now, investors' focus will be on any action by central bank and other regulators elsewhere to restore confidence in the global banking system. Investors will also assess any exposure businesses may have to Credit Suisse and other risks. Sentiments remain fragile, and a nervous air hangs over investors as markets remain on edge. Okay, to more. He's an author. He's joining us live from London. Mark, thank you so much for joining us on WION. What the ECB's rate hike is doing to the global market seems to be the main question. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Well, they are in a very tricky spot because of the inflation issue. Obviously, they have prioritized the inflation issue, and it's very hard for them not to do it at this moment with the exemplary inflation rates. But then again, they did. It will be interesting to see what Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, is saying in a few minutes, because how she sort of in the type of balancing act she has to play, how she phrases it, because it seems like they will probably might not be able to raise interest rates so much further on. And if she signals that might give the market some sort of, there will be market reactions to that as well.
Do you think the ECB was right, especially now when the global banking sector is in turmoil?
Well, possibly, yes, because I think Credit Suisse is a bit of a special case. They are the weakest link in Europe right now, and I think they had so many troubles before. So this extra problem was one problem too many. They had profitability problems due to a large fall in both assets under management and fall in bank deposits. And they had high-risk clients, and you were mentioning some of the big shareholders have been pulling out. So this was one problem too many. So it's not necessarily so that the other big banks are in trouble, and it might even be the case that the big banks might benefit from this, because the markets will now sort of look around and take out the other weak links, and there will probably not be another big weak link as big as Credit Suisse. So this would be smaller companies like Swedish Klarna, for example, might get into trouble, but smaller companies. And so actually the industry concentration for the big banks, that might be even bigger going forward. So the big banks might end up, as they usually do, actually in a better spot.
For joining us on WION, and of course we'll be following this story very closely. We look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you.
China's answer to ChatGPT was unveiled, but it failed to impress markets. The shares of Chinese search engine giant Baidu plunged nearly 10% before recovering some ground. Baidu, a major Chinese search engine, finally showed off its artificial intelligence, or AI-powered chatbot ErnieBot on Thursday. The world got a glimpse of what could be China's strongest rival to U.S. research lab OpenAI's ChatGPT. However, the short, pre-recorded video that served as ErnieBot's introduction fell short of the market's high expectations. The buzz created by ChatGPT since the announcement late last year has been unprecedented. Chinese tech giant and startups have been in a mad dash to create an alternative to Microsoft's ChatGPT because of the app's success. To claim first place, Baidu announced early last month that it was nearly finished with a chatbot using its AI-driven deep learning model, Ernie. Ernie is short for Enhanced Representation Through Knowledge Integration. Baidu introduced ErnieBot in a presentation at its Beijing headquarters just 2 days after Google announced a slew of artificial intelligence tools for its offerings. Microsoft is rumored to be planning a Google countering announcement soon. Baidu CEO Robin Li presented ErnieBot and said, quote, "For sure, we cannot say that it's perfect. So why are we unveiling it today? Because the market demands it," he added. Markets were unimpressed with Baidu's new AI. Shares of the search engine fell nearly 10% during this session. The company's stock ended Thursday nearly 7% lower, whipping over $3 billion of its market value. Baidu claims that it is in the best position to lead the charge to develop China's equivalent to ChatGPT. because of its extensive history of research and development spending on artificial intelligence and deep learning. In 2022, Baidu spent about $3.1 billion on R&D, or about 22% of its revenue. The Chinese search engine giant hopes to use ErnieBot to revolutionize its search engine. Baidu is currently the most populous search engine in China. Earlier this week, OpenAI announced that it will begin releasing a powerful AI model called GPT-4. OpenAI described GPT-4 as a multi-model, which means that it can respond to both visual and textual cues when asked to generate content. During his speech, Baidu's CEO acknowledged GPT-4 by nodding and remarking that its arrival demonstrated the high barrier for this type of technology. And he said GPT-4's ability to summarize information surpassed him. However, he warned against making any hasty geopolitical conclusions. He said that ErnieBot is not a tool of confrontation between China and the United States. He reassured everyone that the two countries would not be at odds over new technology. He also mentioned that 650 businesses have already committed to becoming part of the Ernie ecosystem. The CEO added that some of the signs UPS for ErnieBot's partnerships include Shaolin temples and official Chinese media outlets. For now, though, the disappointment of Baidu's unveil reflects Google's hasty introduction of its AI called Bard last month. Foxconn has won an order to make AirPods for Apple and intends to construct a factory in India to produce the wireless earphones. A Reuters exclusive report has shown the deal will help the world's largest contract electronic manufacturer and the assembler of roughly 70% of all iPhones to become an AirPod supplier for the first time. The Reuters report, quoting sources, showed that Foxconn will invest $200 million in the new India plant to manufacture AirPods. Currently, several Chinese firms manufacture AirPods. Foxconn has chosen Telangana, the southern Indian state, for the plant, but there was no clarity on the details of the deal. According to Reuters source, the company had debated on the pros and cons of manufacturing AirPods. Manufacturing AirPods is not very profitable, but the company eventually decided to go ahead. The Reuters source also added that Apple had requested Foxconn to set up the plant in India for the AirPods deal. That reflects Apple's desire to move its manufacturing away from China. The reason for Apple to look beyond China was the country's stringent mobility restrictions during COVID, which disrupted Foxconn's biggest factor last year. Foxconn, too, has been looking to lower its resilience and reliance on China for production. For example, Foxconn's production plan was unclear whether or not current AirPod suppliers like Luxshare Precision Industry would be affected by Foxconn's production plan was also not clear. Four-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers is ready to end his 18-year association with the Green Bay Packers, the only team he has played for in the league. The quarterback is now planning to join the New York Jets. Packers made 39-year-old Rodgers the highest-paid quarterback last year, but gave him permission to speak with the Jets about a potential trade.
At this point, as I sit here, I think since Friday, I made it clear that my intention was to play, and my intention was to play for the New York Jets.
Okay.
And I haven't been holding anything up at this point. It's been compensation that the Packers are trying to get for me and kind of digging their heels in.
Rodgers had said that he went into a quote-unquote darkness retreat earlier this year, 90% sure that he would retire. That mindset changed, apparently, to the Jets' benefit. The quarterback helped Packers win the Super Bowl at the end of the 2010 season, but has had a strained relationship with the management ever since they traded up to select Jordan Love in the first round of the 2020 draft. Rodgers was NFL's MVP for 2020 and 2021, but has been unable to reach a second Super Bowl. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching the news live from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. I'll see you tomorrow. Meanwhile, more news and headlines coming up on WION World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place